Hello and welcome to another video, and this will be a bit of a different one. Today we'll be talking about my personal 10 favorite games of all time. It was really hard to come up with this list because always there's a ton of games that you like, but you kind of can't fit in. For example, let's say you like two Zelda games, like are you really gonna put two very similar Zelda games on the same list, or Sonic or Mario or whatever, right? And so yeah, a bit of a head scratcher there before I reach the finalists. And this goes without saying really, but this is my personal list, right? So I don't expect anyone to fully agree with the list. And your personal favorites will of course be different. And this is not me saying that these are the best games of all time. It's me saying that these are the best 10 games for me, all the ones that I played. Without further ado, let's begin. Coming in at number 10, and this is not necessarily a numbered list, right? But I try to roughly put the games in order of importance, which is not to say that if a game is behind another one then it's worse or anything. But yeah, at number 10 we have The Incredible Machine. This is a game that was developed by Kevin Ryan and produced by Jeff Tunnell. And the company that produces this game is called Dynamix, and it was published by Sierra. And this may be or may seem a very strange game to include on a top 10 list to you, because it's not a particularly great game, right, in terms of like graphics or even gameplay. It's a puzzle game after all. But the reason I have included this game here is because this game almost single-handedly is responsible for my whole interest in computers, and eventually it's how I chose my career, and so I owe a ton to this game actually. So the story I have with this game is that when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I believe, we started having computing lessons, and this is what, 1995, 1996 I think, sorta. And there wasn't like a lot of stuff on computers at the time, and I was really young, as everyone was in the class, and so we would basically go to the computer lab in the school to just play games. Essentially that was the computer lesson. We wouldn't really do much useful with the computer until later on. And there were quite a few games that we would play there. I remember some painting games that I would just like fill in the colors, or I don't know, a pinball game or some such. I don't remember a lot of games from that era, but this one I remember crystal clear because this was my favorite game when I'd go in there. And I really thought that the creation of these Rube Goldberg machines and making them work was like super interesting. And so I really look forward to the computer lessons every week, so I could just sit in the chair and play The Incredible Machine and try to get a little bit further than I did the week before. And so yeah, very simple game, but in hindsight, it is one of the biggest influences I have on me choosing computer science as a career, and basically who I am today, really. Next on the list is Dota, more specifically Dota 2, though I did play a lot of Dota 1 on Warcraft 3 as well. And the reason I'm begrudgingly putting this game in here is because, given the fact that I have over 3,000 hours played on this game, to be more specific, I have 3,085 hours played of Dota 2. I mean, it would be really unfair for me to not include this game as big of a part of my life as it was. And so it is really easy for us to just shit on every MOBA these days and say that the community is toxic and all that kind of jazz, which is true, to be sure. But there's also some great stuff that came in there. This was a stretch of my life that I was really into competitive games, and I really wanted to be good at video games, right? It was a big thing for me. And so I would basically learn and try and play every single hero in the game. Obviously I had my favorites. To name a few, I really liked playing Invoker, I really liked playing Brubik. Let's see what else. Kunkka was another one. Yeah, I mean, there were others, of course, but I do recall these three being my favorites. Yeah, Clockwork as well, now that I think about it. And I think that the thing that Dota 2 did so well for me was obviously the competitive aspect. We had a group of friends that would play Dota pretty much every day, and obviously we would get mad at each other when people made mistakes, which is where the toxicity of these games come from. But I think that the one thing I remember the most about Dota is the international. So when they started doing the international competitions, which is global scale, right, and having this really organized event where they would go in and bring people from all over the world and have the qualifiers and then the playoffs in this big stadium where people would play. I never personally went to the international, but the whole buzz around the event was really, really big. And so I would buy the compendium, I think it is the name, right, and to not only get some nice rewards in game, mostly cosmetic, and this is another thing that Dota and Valve in general does really right. It's that there wasn't really pay to win in the game. You could win the match just as well if you had a free hero or if you were playing with a cool costume. It didn't make any difference. And then sitting down with my friends and making events where we would just go to someone's house and buy a bunch of snacks and sit down and watch the matches of the international was really, really cool for me. And obviously I killed a lot of time at work as well. I do remember that. So when the qualifiers, there's pretty much games happening all over the year, not only on the international but other competitions as well. And then I would just leave Twitch running there on the side, sometimes listening, sometimes watching and working alongside it. It was a nice background noise that I had to accompany me every day. Other things that came from that, I remember AC, which was a caster that I like very much. He played a lot of Ronald Jenkins music songs during during downtime, which is how I discovered that artist, and a few others as well. So some other things came from that era as well. Generally, I don't play Dota too much these days anymore, if at all. It's one of those things that when you play a game too much, you kind of get sick of playing it, you know? But nevertheless, I can recognize that it was very, very big for me. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I would recommend you start playing it, but it is a good game, to be sure. Next game on the list is also a Valve game, though not originally, because it was a mod, right? But it is Counter-Strike, and this is another situation where it's another game that I have put in so many hours that it would be completely unfair for me to not include it on this list. So I have Steam open up here. Let's see, on Counter-Strike 1 I didn't have Steam at the time, or at least this account, so I don't have any hours in there. But that said, I have, let's see, 390 hours on Counter-Strike Go, which is Counter-Strike 2 as this recording is made. So not a lot, but truthfully the most amount of time I played Counter-Strike was in internet cafes, or as we're called here in Brazil, LAN houses. And so I had a PC at the time, of course, but I only had dial-up connection, and my PC wasn't really good. I think I had a K6 500 from AMD, if I'm not mistaken, without any video card. So it was a very incapable PC of playing complex games. And there was a lot of PC games coming out at the time. I didn't have a job, so I couldn't go ahead and buy my own peripherals or my own PC. So, and this was true for most people actually here in Brazil. So, which is why the LAN houses were so popular. You would just go into this place where you would pay an hourly fee, and you would have the PC just for you, and you could play pretty much any game they had pre-installed in there. There were a lot of popular games at the time. Obviously, we had Counter-Strike, we had Need for Speed, the Underground series. The Underground 1 was the one that was big at the time. There were strategy games like Age of Empires 2, Age of Mythology, Warcraft 3 and its mods. I played a lot of Dota 1 in this case, right? At LAN houses as well at the time. There were some single player games here and there, and also MMORPGs. This is before World of Warcraft, so I recall people playing, I think, Ragnarok, I don't recall exactly, or maybe Tibia, not sure. I didn't play those. But really, I would go to LAN houses to play Counter-Strike. That was a big thing. When I got sick of playing Counter-Strike, I'd play some Need for Speed and then go right back into Counter-Strike. And Yeah, like it was really fun because there was this local competition, you know. So unlike today, where you basically connect into a global lobby and you're matchmake with people with similar skill to you, or maybe not if you're playing casual, right? It was really like luck of the draw who was on the LAN house at the time when you went in there. And so sometimes I'd go in there and the best players on my neighborhood would be there. It would be really hard. Other times nobody would be there, like some unknowns, and then I would be the best player there at the time, and it was really fun. And there were, of course, local tournaments as well, so you'd assemble a team with your friends and then just go in there and participate in the local tournament for just bragging rights. Really, there wasn't a prize or anything. I do understand there was more formalized means of competition and like nationals and internationals, I suppose, but I wasn't first at the level or neither the age to take part in those. And so yeah, really for me it was just like good fun going into the LAN house and playing with everyone. And I do recall I have one story from that time, which was when I was playing in Dust 2, I believe. I always liked playing sniper with the AWP or AWM, if you will. And it is very obnoxious for anyone that's on the receiving end of it. But for me, playing on the on the giving end was really fun. And on Dust 2, pretty much I'd always stay on long sight lines like the terrorist base and just keep looking at the door and killing people. And then if my team was losing, I'd just hold station at the base and wait for people to come around and kill them cheaply with the AWP. And I do recall one match I was doing really, really well. I think it was over like 25-1 or 25-2 KD ratio. Because of it, I was camping, right? So it was really easy for me to make such a big score. And a guy got really, really mad. He just got up in the middle of the LAN house. He was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And he said my nickname. And where is he? And he basically wanted to punch me. He was really mad. And I just sat down and said nothing, you know, because obviously I wasn't about to get beat up. But that's a nice memory I have from that time.
Dance, Dance Revolution. Let's DDR.
Next up we have Dance Dance Revolution, and I'm gonna nominate here specifically the Extreme release, which is the 8th release of the series. It's from 2002, and I mean I played a lot of rhythm games and dance games when they were really popular. It's a genre that I really got to experience a lot, and I really think it was a novel concept at the time, which is why it became so famous. And after DDR we had a lot of other spin-offs from that, not from the same company obviously, but we have Pump It Up from Andamiro, In the Groove, which was like a sort of kind of bootleg version of DDR, and obviously the ones that used other stuff, for example Guitar Hero or Rhythm Band, which used instruments rather than your feet to play the game. Now the reason I chose Extreme specifically is because there was a bowling alley very close to where I lived. This is sort 2007 to 2010, I think, thereabouts. And I would go to this bowling alley pretty much daily to play DDR Extreme. And they would sell the quarters in bulk. Like in Brazil, for most of the time we can't like put actual quarters on the machines. You have to buy a special coin that fits in there. And I would buy them in bulk, so like 100, 150 at a time. And I would get a pretty good discount, of course. And I would just go in and play pretty much like 3 to 5 quarters every single day, sometimes more. And it was, I think, 5 songs a credit, which was really good. And so yeah, like I just pretty much do that every day, and I got really thin at the time, which was really good for my health. And eventually I would start taking part in competitions, and some of the best friends I have even to this day are from the time where I played rhythm games and DDR specifically. And so this was a great time to just go out with friends, go and find a new machine that they had opened up in town, and then you'd play some credits in there, and then go to the supermarket and buy some soda or a snack, and then talk around, and then go back and play some more in the machine. And then at other times during the year we would travel together for competitions. And so yeah, it was really a great bonding experience overall. So even more than the game itself is like the whole experience and the community that came around the whole rhythm game genre as it is. And for that, DDR Extreme is my pick here for the major representative of this phase of my life. Next game on this list is Dark Souls, and as you will see, this is one of the newer games I have on this list. And Dark Souls came at a time where I really wasn't much into console gaming at all. I didn't play Dark Souls when it was released, not even close to it. I had this friend at work that was really into Dark Souls, and he would say, hey man, you gotta play this game, like it's really good, you won't believe it. And I was just like, sure man, yeah, I'll try and play it sometime, but I never did. I never did because at this point I was like, you know what, every new game that comes out, I never like it. They have too much story, they have too many cutscenes. The games are generally a lot easier because they're trying to be more cinematic, right? And so they're trying to show you the story. And yeah, I was really disconnected with gaming as a whole at this point in time. But he insisted so much that I was like, you know what, fine, I'll try and play it. So I went in and I bought the Prepare to Die edition on PC, so you can gather from that this is way removed from the original release of the game, which was on consoles in 2011. And then I started playing the game, and I was just hooked. I was completely hooked, because there were no cutscenes, there was no long-winded story. They just threw you into the game, and then yeah, just go nuts, man. Try and see what you can do. And I like that freedom so much. I was missing that freedom from so many games I had played recently. For example, I had played Zelda Twilight Princess not that long ago, and that left a horrible taste in my mouth because I was like, Jesus Christ, stop holding my hand and just let me play the game. And here came Dark Souls, and it did just that. And of course, was the game hard? Very hard. And I like that a lot because it was so difficult to make progress, but every time you found a bonfire, it was like, Jesus Christ, yes, I am one bit closer to beating the game. And then I have so many. I'll make a video specifically on Dark Souls. This is just a small blurb, so I won't retell everything because I have tons of stuff to talk about Dark Souls, of course. But my experience with Dark Souls is very similar to everyone's, and it's for good reason. You go through first you ring the 2 bells of awakening, and then you're like, all right, I'm doing really well. And then Sans Fortunes opens up, and you're like, yeah, I guess there's more to this than just what I did so far. Then you go through Sans Fortress. I didn't find the freaking midway bonfire in Sans Fortress, so it was really hard for me because I had to do the whole thing in one shot because I didn't see the freaking bonfire. And then once you defeat the Iron Golem, you get picked up, and then they put you in Anor Londo, and it's like, wow, this is something else, man. And then you go to Anor Londo, and of course, as everyone says, and it's for good reason, you get Ornstein and Smough. And then you go into that fight, and my friend told me to do the whole game without summons because he said it made the game too easy. And I believed him, so I did the whole game without summons. But I'll tell you, at Ornstein and Smough, I almost broke that rule because it's like, there is no way, man. What is going on? They want me to beat 2 bosses at the same time. This is impossible, man. I can't do it. I remember I probably lost more than 50 times, maybe 100 times. I didn't count, but it was a lot. And I didn't know about the quick little jump that they do in the speedrun, and I know how to do these days, right? But at the time I didn't know, so I had to go through a ton of stuff before I could get another try in. But eventually I beat Ornstein and Smough, and this was the best feeling ever. It was like, oh my god, I actually know how to play this game. This is insane. And yeah, as everybody says, and it is true, the second half of Dark Souls is not as good as the beginning. Yeah, the Bed of Chaos, everything there, going to Lost Izalith and doing Bed of Chaos kinda sucks. Four Kings a little bit better, but still not great. The 7th area with the library, I think that one is really cool, though the boss fight is kind of weird because you sometimes die for no reason because of the curse. So yeah, there's that. And the graveyard is super obnoxious with you not seeing jack shit and you needing the lantern and the everything. So yeah, the second half is not as great. However, then you get to the last part where you go and face Gwen. And then the game really picks back up, and when you go into the arena and you're facing Gwen, you really feel the weight of the moment there. And after I beat the game, I rebeat the game several times over, and I went into YouTube and watched all the videos about the lore that great channels like, I don't recall the name right now, but yeah. And watching playthroughs of other people. Watching people play through Dark Souls is always fun because you know that you're gonna get screwed over, so you have a lot of fun seeing them fall into the same traps that you did. But yeah, I'll stop talking now because I have too much to say about this game, and this is just a short list. But yeah, Dark Souls, of course. Alright, we have reached our top 5. And the first game in the top 5 is World of Warcraft. And not any version of World of Warcraft, though I played many expansions, but it is actually vanilla or classic World of Warcraft, if you will, the one that came in 2004. I didn't play at launch, but pretty close to it. I think I started playing in 2005 or some such. And yeah, this game is just magical, man. I don't have a subscription right now, so I really can't tell you how many hours I have in my main character, but it is up there. It's for sure more than Dota, probably like 4,000, 5,000 hours or some such. For sure, maybe more, I don't know. But yeah, WoW was more than a game, like for everyone. WoW was really an experience. It was a social hub. This was before we had like Discord or a lot of places that we have these days to talk. So people would just go into WoW and talk with other people and just have a good time. And the game sometimes was even background to the whole thing. Like the game, if the gameplay part wasn't even there, it would be fine. Nevertheless, the gameplay part was there, and it was really good. Seeing your character grow, it was really I wouldn't say slow paced, but correctly paced, where you just got everything at a nice rate. Every time you went into a new zone and you saw the new zone, it was always a big spectacle. And I didn't raid during Classic, so I didn't have that part of the experience. It took me forever to level up at that point. But I don't mind at all, to be honest with you, because leveling up was the game. The journey was the game. It wasn't the destination, and it is true. And after Classic, once again, I'll make a video specific on WoW, so I won't go into too many stories here. I had this whole guild that we played a lot, especially during Cataclysm, and we would like play I think twice a week and raid and everything and talk together and talk about the game. So yeah, it was really a great bonding time with friends as well, playing WoW. As the expansion came through, I didn't play Burning Crusade much. I played Wrath of the Lich King just a tad bit as well. I really came back into the game in earnest during Cataclysm. Everybody likes to shit on Cataclysm. I actually like the expansion a lot. I do see that the fact that they took away the old world and revamped the quest, that was not good. I prefer the classic world. However, I did like the raids. I like the end game experience. I like Firelands a lot, and it was the time I played the best, I think, in my WoW career, if you will. I had some top 100 parses at that point in time, and I was really proud of it. Not that it doesn't mean anything anymore, but it really was cool. And then the expansions after, it was ever so, it was growing worse and worse as a player, I have to say, because every time you got back into the game, I have an example, Legion, they played a lot, and you just go back in there and they have a level boost. I didn't buy a level boost, but the leveling experience was just there just because, and just like level really fast and get into this hamster wheel of just like doing dungeons and doing Mythic Plus after that, and then doing raids, and then the game became too much optimized. The game wasn't magical anymore. And so when I say WoW, and when I'm talking about it here, I'm talking about what you're seeing here on the screen right now. which is Vanilla WoW. That point in time, it is hard to capture. I came back to WoW during the relaunch of Classic, I think in 2017 or 19, right? One of the two. And it was really, really cool, to be honest with you guys. It was, it was something good that Blizzard did recently, which is hard to say these days. But as with everything these days, and it's not Blizzard's fault or WoW's fault, everybody's way too much focused on efficiency and optimization these days, and so eventually that happened to Classic as well. And with GDKPs and selling runs and people buying gold, all that, you may say that happened during Classic as well, maybe, but I wasn't raiding at the time, I wasn't buying gold, so it didn't affect me. So it recaptured some of the magic, but not all of it. But that said, taking all that aside and talking specifically about Vanilla WoW, yeah, it was, and still is, a very special experience. This is very similar to Dota 2. It's a game that I have a hard time recommending you because it can make you lose a lot of your life playing it, so it's a bit dangerous. But that said, it's a fantastic game, of course. Alright, next game on our list is Gran Turismo. Specifically Gran Turismo 4, it was really hard for me to choose a specific Gran Turismo to put in here. I was tempted into placing Gran Turismo 2 here, but I did play Gran Turismo 4 a bit more, if not the same, but a bit more. But I mean, Gran Turismo 4 is just a more complete package, obviously being the PlayStation 2 and everything, and so I think the more representative experience of the whole thing would be Gran Turismo 4. And Gran Turismo is the franchise that I owe me being a racing fan today, and playing iRacing and having a rig here by my side, and having bought a kart in the past to compete, and now trying to teach my kids the love for motorsports. And so the thing that Kazunori Yamauchi and the people at not only Sony, of course, but Polyphony Digital did was really bring to life something special that taught people the magic about cars and about racing. So in terms of like gameplay, it has been far surpassed. There's a lot of nostalgia videos on the internet of people saying, oh, Gran Turismo 4 was never surpassed, it's the best game of all time in terms of racing, right? And I can see the point, you know. In some ways I think that the single player campaign experience is really good, but you really can't excuse some of the things anymore, right? For example, you having 6 cars on track at one point is like, you know, it is a bit hard to excuse that, because you have fantastic experiences these days. Even with the game that I trash here on the channel, like Forza Motorsport, there's a lot of good things there as well, right? Or the game that I prefer, which is iRacing, does a ton of things better than Gran Turismo. Perhaps not the campaign, but all else it does well. But really, when you put the game on the context of its time, it's just insane. Like the amount of cars, the quality of the single player experience, the visual quality of the game in general, the audio quality, even though that's a bit more debatable. And yeah, in general, it's just a fantastic game. I could place other racing games on this spot here, and there's a ton that I can talk about. I love Outrun, for example. It's really big for me. Any Mario Kart could be here, really, especially Mario Kart 64 and Mario Kart Super Circuit on the GBA. Or I could place in here Daytona USA, which was like a big motivating factor for me going to arcades for a big point in time. I just wanted to sit there and play Daytona. Or more arcade racing games like Need for Speed, Hot Pursuit and Underground, which are the two that I play the most. And Burnout, why not? Burnout, especially 3, Takedown was the one that I played the most. So yeah, every single racing game that I'm citing here has a little bit of contribution on building my love for motorsports. But if you compare all those and then you place them on a bar graph or something like that, then Gran Turismo 4 would be like way over 50%. It really was the one that taught me, racing, there's more to racing than just like going on and just crashing your car and trying to pass your rivals at any cost, and taught me patience, and trying to be consistent with my lap times and everything. And obviously iRacing came in and honed that way further, but the little seed, the initial spark there was from Gran Turismo, to be sure. So yeah. Here it is, the top 3. And well, it is hard for me to say any of these 3 games being at the first spot for me, So they are kind of interchangeable depending on the day you ask me. But today, I'm thinking that number 3 on my list is Pokémon Red. And I could place several Pokemon games in here because I played a lot of them. I played Pokemon Red, Yellow. I have the cards right here. I could show you them perhaps. Another video. Pokemon Silver and Crystal. 3rd generation, I had Ruby. I didn't have Emerald, unfortunately. Then I skipped the 4th generation for the longest time. Then I skipped also Black and White, but I have Black 2 and White 2. And then, everybody says the same thing, and it is true. After Pokemon went 3D, it kind of started going downhill, so I have Pokemon X in here. It is not great. And then from then on, I bought some other games. I have Alpha Sapphire. I have a ton of games on the Switch, like Pokemon Go, Sword, and Arceus, Legends Arceus. And yeah, it has been going a bit downhill in quality, right? I guess everybody would say that. But this is not to talk about the recent dip in quality for Pokemon, but talk about the past, right? And to me, Pokemon Red was a phenomenon. It was for everyone, really, right? So I bought a lot of gaming magazines back in the day, and I do recall crystal clear seeing in the magazine pictures for this new game that was coming out in Japan that was Pokemon, and they were talking about this fever that was starting with Pokemon at the time, and the pictures, the old pictures of Pokemon drawn by Ken Sugimori, they looked so cool. And I saw the pictures, and I saw the box, and I saw the explanation of what the game was, and it seemed so interesting to me. And I started researching more about Pokemon. I was like, you know what? I think this will be really cool. And this was before the game was even here in Brazil, or the anime as well. And I do remember I had started earning an allowance from my parents quite recently. And I started saving up my allowance to buy a Game Boy. Because through the magazine, I knew the release date of Pokemon right here in Brazil. So I started saving my allowance. It was months, I think 8 or 9 months of me just not spending a single cent. I was just saving my whole allowance every month in and month out. And when Pokemon came out, I picked up all the money. I went to the mall with my mom, and I bought a Model 1 Game Boy, the gray one, the big one that takes 4 AA batteries, and a copy of Pokemon Red. And then I never went through so many batteries in my life, let me tell you. I just would play Pokemon day in and day out. It's all I did, and it's all I thought about. And I wanted to beat the game. I wanted to build my team. And, well, as in every single part of the world, here in Brazil, Pokemon was also a massive hit. And so I had friends that also bought Game Boys, and I had friends that also bought copies of Pokemon. My best friend, he bought Pokemon Blue, so we could trade between each other and catch them all. And I did catch them all, and I had my certificate. And we would convene during not only after class, but also during the weekends to battle. And then there was these internal rules, your Pokemon has to be level 100 because that would be more fair, and you can't use Mewtwo, and we try to not use the same Pokemon that each other use. So there were his Pokemon, for example, he would use Jolteon, a lot, or Alakazam, and I would use Gengar or Electrode. When I found out that Electrode was the fastest Pokemon in the game, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put Thunder Wave on this guy and just Thunder Wave turn 1 and destroy his Alakazam. And at one point in time, I even trained the Beedrill because I found out that bug types were super effective against Psychic, and I tried taking down his Alakazam with Pin Missile, which didn't quite work out, but it was a fun moment all around. And of course, he used the Blastoise, I used the Charizard, and that was that. And after that, Pokemon Stadium came out and we had transfer pack, and you put your Pokemons inside the N64 and play them on 3D. And then the trading cards came along and they were just making us spend more and more money, and then we'd go to the shop every single weekend to play and trade Pokemon cards. And I have my trading card badges in here that I can show in another video. And really Pokemon took over our lives collectively for, like, I would say 2 years, perhaps. I don't know, I don't recall the exact time frame, but it was a long time. And it all started with this game here, Pokémon Red. So, it is a very special game, even to this day. When I play Gen 1, I usually play Pokemon Fire Red just for the added graphical fidelity, but if you ask me, I can go back to Gen 1 on the original Game Boy without colors any day, and I'll play the game and I'll have just as much fun. So yeah, they really captured light in the bottle here. Fantastic game. And now it's number 2. It's really even harder for me to place number 2 and number 1 on this list. But today I'm thinking that my number 2 is Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It is hard even for me to say if it's Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Sonic 2, because I actually play Sonic 2 a lot more than Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because I think it's a shorter game, and the initial stages of Sonic 2, they go by a lot faster, I think, and it's more fluid up until, I think, Hilltop it starts dipping down a little bit, and then, after Metropolis, it's time to turn off the console. But that said, I have to play Sonic 3 and Knuckles here rather than Sonic 2 because it's a more complete package. It just is. You have Knuckles as a character, obviously. You can choose everyone. You can save your game. You have Super Sonic, and Super Sonic actually unlocks a different ending, and you have the cutscenes as you change stages. And if you compare, I think I said this on the Sonic and 3 Knuckles video on this channel, I think that if you compare Sonic 3 and Knuckles to every other platform at that point in time, including any Mario game, I don't think it can be surpassed. Because you may say, well, Mario World has more stages. Yeah, that is true, but aside from that, I think that the ingenuity of the momentum gameplay, the cutscenes, the visual quality, the audio quality, the sounds and songs in Sonic is just absolutely fantastic. It is just a complete package. When I had my Sega Genesis, I bought a Sega Genesis because I saw Sonic 1 playing on a rental place and was like, Jesus Christ, I have to have this console. And I didn't actually have Sonic 1. I got my Sega Genesis with Sonic 2, which is what I played for the longest time. And then when I heard that Sonic 3 was coming around, I was like, oh, I have to have this game. And then I bought the Sonic 3 cartridge, and I kid you not, I beat Sonic 3 every single week for I don't know how many times. I don't know for how much time, like years maybe, I'm not sure. I had a neighbor and he would come around to my house like very frequently, and we would play together. He would play as Tails, which kind of sucks now that I think about it. At the time I didn't think too much about it, but yeah, it's hard to keep up as Tails, right? But still, we had this bonding experience that we would play together. And I noticed I only said Sonic 3, right? So I would get your big arms and beat the game, and that was the game for me. I was like, wow, this game is great. It's a bit short, but it's a great game, And later that year, Sonic and Knuckles came out. And I didn't really hear much about Sonic and Knuckles, but when I went to the video store where I used to rent games, I saw this strange cartridge that had an opening. I was like, what the hell is this? And the cover in Sonic and Knuckles is very, very cool as well, right? It's very different from the other Sega Genesis showcases. And so I rented Sonic & Knuckles, and then I found out that you could just like plug Sonic 3 on top of Sonic & Knuckles and you had a complete game. I was like, what the hell? This game is like double the size. What is going on? And I kid you not, I would rent like Sonic & Knuckles at least once a month. I absolutely love the game. I love the Blue Spheres. And yeah, I never actually bought Sonic & Knuckles because cartridges are very expensive, even more so here in Brazil. So we would like buy bootleg cartridges very frequently. And Sonic & Knuckles was one that I don't think they managed to bootleg because of the lock-on technology, you know. And so you actually had to go and buy the original Sonic & Knuckles, which I didn't find. And so my experience with Sonic & Knuckles was actually always renting Sonic & Knuckles over and over again. Now that I think about it, I probably should have proposed the video store to buy their copy, but you know, I didn't think that at the time, so just rent the game. Nevertheless, I would just play the game over and over, and at that point in time, I wouldn't really play Sonic & Knuckles, or Sonic 3 and Knuckles, sorry, at my top 10 necessarily, because there were other games that I maybe played more, that I liked more. Even at later dates, for example, Star Fox is an easy one that I can say. However, this game is one that has lived the whole period with me. So, unlike other games on this list, like Gran Turismo 4, like Dota certainly, or World of Warcraft, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a game that I can just sit down right now and play the game the whole way through. And there are very few games that I can say that. There are very few games that I will beat religiously, even yearly. I guess Super Metroid is another one. Mega Man X is another one. There are a few that are like that. But anytime I'm sitting down in the living room, I don't know what to do. I just turn on the Switch and I start playing some Sonic. Usually Sonic 2, very frequently also Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So the replayability and the longevity on this game is just unparalleled for me. It is the biggest one on this list, which would perhaps even put it at number 1 for me actually, but there's a reason it's not a number 1, as we will see. And I don't see this changing, to be honest with you. Like, I think when I'm 50, when I'm 60, and I'm sitting down in my living room and thinking, what the hell do I do now? I'm completely bored. I'll probably boot up and play Sonic 3 and Knuckles, man, because it is really a timeless game. And now for number 1, and if you have been paying attention to the past videos I've posted on this channel, it wouldn't be a surprise at all, but my number 1 best game of all time is Ocarina of Time. And this game is less replayable than several other games on this list. It has a lot of flaws that have been surpassed or have been fixed by later games in the series even. The story is really good, but there are other better stories in other games that are more story focused. But the reason I put this game here is completely nostalgic, to be sure, but this is the game that taught me what being a hero was all about. And this is very cheesy, I know, but what can I say? There is a reason this game, it always wins best game of all time, and I guess it won't be true for forever, like when we are 20 years far removed from in the future, or 30 or maybe 50, maybe other games will take the place of this one, probably even. But for the generation that is alive and kicking right now, which is my generation, this game was like a breakthrough with things that came before it. The hype for this game was completely unreal. Like, as I mentioned before, I bought a lot of gaming magazines at the time, and you couldn't buy an edition of a Nintendo magazine or a generalized magazine even without hearing something about Ocarina of Time. Because you have to remember, the game that came previously was A Link to the Past in 1991, and Ocarina of Time came out in 1998, so that's 7 years of difference. There's also the fact that the Nintendo 64 itself was late to the party, so it also got delayed. And when the Nintendo 64 came out and Mario 64 came out, the people were like, oh my god, Mario 64 is insane. And Mario 64 could easily be on this list here. Easily. It is not because it's my personal list, so I had to make space for other games, for example, The Incredible Machine. But game for game, of course, Mario 64 is better than The Incredible Machine, right? I'm not saying that, but I kind of wanted to shout out that game. So if you want an honorable mention for Mario 64, here it is. And people were just like absolutely flabbergasted of how good Mario 64 was and how it redefined the 3D platformer genre, which it really did, and camera control and everything. And then when Nintendo announced that they were making a Zelda game for the Nintendo 64, people just went wild. They were like, well, if this console can do this with Mario, what can it do with Zelda? And then the expectation and the hype just built and built and built. And the illustrations for this game were also really good, where you saw like Link holding a bow or Link doing playing the ocarina even. And it was like a really imaginative piece of art where you just your mind would go and think, wow, what is going to happen here? This game is probably magical. And it is very frequent in gaming history that the game is hyped beyond belief, and when it comes out, people are like, yeah, the game is good, but is it that great? I kind of expected more. There's games that come out and they don't even match that. They disappoint wholly. Like Duke Nukem Forever is a good example. Or more recently, if you want to think about, for example, Starfield, which is a game that people are really looking forward to, and then turns out, well, the game is, it's okay, And it is rare for a game to be hyped beyond belief and then actually deliver on the hype and then some. And this is exactly what Ocarina of Time did. Like, people were very hyped, game came out, and it actually surpassed everyone's expectations. Because in terms of scope, in terms of story, in terms of like everything, really audio, it was a huge leap when compared to other games at the time. You have to really compare what other games were being released at that point in time with what Ocarina of Time offered, and then you see, wow, okay, this is really on a different league. And now personally, for me, the thing that, and I'll make a specific video on Ocarina of Time in this aspect that I'm going to talk about right now in the very short future, but to me, Ocarina of Time taught me how to be a hero, because I was very afraid of playing like scary games. I wouldn't even play the Ghost Mansion in Mario 64. Like, think about that. And then Ocarina of Time really played some really scary things for me as a kid to face, but also gave me the weapons and the teachings to say, hey man, you can do this, like, go ahead, you are capable of that. And then I persevered through, and I really made it a point to not look up anything. It was really, really hard for me to not look up anything, because obviously the water tempo exists. And so I must have gotten very frustrated at the time, but somehow I persevered, which took months, by the way. And eventually I beat the game, and after I beat the game I was like, okay, this is really something else. This changed me. There are very few games that change you as a person, and this is one that changed me, for sure. And after that, I obviously have played Ocarina of Time a lot more since then. I did speedrunning, I did a lot of randomizers, as I do even to this day. And it is a testament to the longevity and how good, really, the game is. But unlike other games, for example Sonic, it is not as magical when you're following playthroughs. That is to be expected, right? And of course, today I respect Ocarina of Time and I love the game a lot, but what can I say? Turns out it really was the best game of all time, man. And there you have it. This is my top 10 list of games. Obviously, there were games I didn't include here that I very easily could. I mentioned Mario 64. Star Fox 64 is another one. A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, other games on the Sega Genesis that I played a ton, like Toe Jam and Earl and Road Rash, and even more modern games that I played a ton as well, like Shovel Knight or Hollow Knight. They all very easily could have been on this list, but you know, we kind of have to pick and choose our favorites. And I tried and pick a very representative game of every point in my life thus far. Maybe if I make this list again in 10 years, the list will be slightly different. There will be games that I discover on this next 10 years that will take the place of some of these. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.